My great-grandfather was born in 1870 in Caroline County, Virginia. Born a slave, according to my family history, taught himself to read, moved to Washington, D.C. in 1896. Now, there's a time break around the official end of slavery and him being born a slave in 1870. And I've had some time to think about that. Either there's some mythology going on in the family history, or the U.S. government was less efficient in shutting down that particular program than they were in setting it up. I'm going to go with the latter. My great-grandfather had two daughters, one of whom was my maternal grandmother, Lorraine Martin. In 2005, after my own mother passed away, I found out that my grandmother was the first black employee in the U.S. Supreme Court. And there's this article in the Washington Afro-American. She's featured there later. Jimmy Carter gave her a commendation for this great achievement. The article, they asked her, what's it like to work in such an historic and august institution? And she regaled on how impressive it was and how interesting and beautiful. And then they asked her boss at the time, what do you think of having the first Negro woman working in your office? And she goes, she's just fine. It's like, okay. Now, my grandmother had one kid. She had one kid who was my mother, Arnita Lorraine Thurston, pictured here at age 4, very adorable. Right, you can see where I get my adorableness from her adorable gene, right, James? There's an adorableness gene. Our psychopathic scientists could tell us. I'm so relieved to be further away from you now. And I want to add that, like, don't do his portrait because there's going to be blood just flowing. Just a dark person in there. So my mother, very adorably stationed here at 4, her mother, very accomplished, very busy, very world-traveling, had a good social life, wasn't always a fan of motherhood. Shipped off her daughter at age 8 to boarding school in rural Pennsylvania. I know this because our mother told us, but we also found letters as we were packing up her stuff, and we found this letter that she sent from the Holy Providence School, and it says, Dear Mother, I am having fun, but I do not like it here. I am mad at you. Please send me some cookies and a Sparkle Plenty doll. Please send it because I do not have anything to play with. Yours truly, Arnita. And that's a very sad letter, kind of cute, sad combo, terrible penmanship, by the way. Yes, I will judge my mother's penmanship when she was 8. That's terrible. But there is some clean handwriting on there. It's the lower left corner. It just says, over. And when you turn this letter over, you get another letter. If your little girl is dissatisfied, we'd be glad to have her bed for children who are anxious to come. Signed, Sister. And I think she whispered when she wrote it, like, sister. This is NSA wiretapping 1948 style. Little black girl wants a cookie, alert the authorities. My mom was not long for that school. And in fact, the school has some historic consequence. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went to the school. Ed Bradley was only 2 years ahead of my mother at this school. It's a very special school founded by Catherine Drexel of Drexel University, a division of the Catholic Church, designed to convert Negroes and Indians to the Catholic faith. So my mom was a prisoner there for a brief period of time in her life. She came back to D.C., and she grew up the very major model of a modern Negro woman. She's got a dress below the knee. She's got a basket presumably filled with conformist and laudable attitudes toward America and its political situation. But this would not last long either because she kept learning and changing and her social network adapted. She started hanging out with dudes like this. Some of you have been cool at some point in your life. Some of you know people you would describe as cool. I am here to let you know you were not, they are not. This is the last cool dude to ever walk the earth. His name is El Dorado, like the car. And everything about him is cool. Get a closer look. telephone, pants, the collar, the hair. I want to use a phone. I want to read a newspaper because of this dude, because he makes it look so amazing. My mom kept shifting her social world and her attitudes, and she can be found on 16th Street outside of Malcolm X Park and the African Liberation Day Parade, down with everything, down with imperialism. Eritreans for something. I don't even know what they're for, but they're for it. My mom is down for it too, and she's right there in the middle mugging the camera, because you never know, the revolution might just be photographed, even if not at high enough speeds to be called television. So that was going on. And this was the house that I grew up in a few blocks away from there. That's me and my sister. On the left side, that's our dog, who was a full member of the family. On the right side, and when you have this politically active, Afrocentric mother, it sort of affects the culture that gets thrown into your head as a kid. Like, I didn't have Saturday morning cartoons. That wasn't technically allowed. I didn't have See, Spot, Run types of little educational books. The first book I remember having as a kid was this. That's a little heavy for an 8-year-old. I'm out on the stoop in my front yard, like, listen to me, brothers and sisters, Cocoa Puffs, all bust, all black, everything, right? Just like being ridiculous. And the reverse view, the view of the world outside of my house, was this. Maybe that's LZ in there. I don't know. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what kind of gang he was in. Different city beginning with the letter D. My mom was a notorious documenter of the war that was going on right outside of our front window. This wasn't for the police. This wasn't for some kind of book to sell. She just wanted to capture this major dysfunction that was going on. She felt the historic nature of what crack was doing to our neighborhood and so many across the country. I like to think she was planning for a big drug dealer reunion, and she could like sell pictures like at the amusement parks. It was like, smile. They're not smiling. They're not smiling. They're just destroying things, including, sadly, many of themselves. And this is a transition out of that world. Mom's effort led me to graduate from the Sidwell Friends School, led me to graduate in this shot from Harvard University. And in this moment, my sister captured it, and my mom said, we did it! And she gave this huge hug. And it wasn't just like a me and her thing. That was a collective we across space and time and ancestry. We all built together to get to this particular moment and do what? So many hats I have been privileged to wear, many boxes I can call my own. One is to have hosted the show on the Discovery Science Channel, all about the future of science and tech. I traveled the world playing with the gadgets of people who may significantly affect the way we live. We did an episode on the future of sex. We did another episode on the future of pleasure. I was troubled that those were not in the same episode. I find sex very pleasurable, and I don't know if I like that future, science. Looking at you, psychopath. I'm just gonna call you Psycho for short. I also helped found this political blog, Jack and Jill Politics. You'll notice that our logo is a watermelon, and that was a conscious and obvious choice. As you all are very well familiar, the watermelon has long symbolized intelligent political discourse, and so we wanted to choose something that everybody could kind of recognize. Like, yo, that's a smart-ass website you got right there. I know, watermelon, right? Does a body good. I worked for 5 years as director of digital of this operation, which is not too far from where we stand, and had a lot of things to say and do there. I think my most significant contribution were the roles that I got to play. Cooter Obama was my favorite. I was like all the black people in the Onion photos for a time. Seriously, I was Obama, I was Obama's mom, I was all three Supremes. It's just the wig. You could do a lot with a wig and Photoshop. I have been all the Negroes. And I've since moved on and founded this company called Cultivated Wit, and we seek to build at the intersection of humor and technology, using comedy's ability to cut through bullshit, using technology's ability to build more engaging platforms for storytelling. And I want to continue down one of the more public service things that I do. I like math a lot, and I love black people. I'm looking at some black people right now. How y'all doing? This is good. And so sometimes I combine my love for math and black people into something I call negrospotting. I like to count the black people in the room. And it's not a conscious thing. It's more of a subconscious. Like some of you probably, if you've been one of the few women in the room, you're lady counting. You're doing it. You're counting women. If you're young and there's a bunch of old people, you're youth counting. So there's all kinds of things that we do. I took it up a notch a few weeks ago when I found myself in Tampa, and I did negrospotting at the Republican National Convention. And I decided to tweet about it using the hashtag, and I had never been to an RNC before. And on television, it looks really diverse because they pay the camera operators extremely well. And they're like, go a tight shot on a Latina right now, let's go. Tight shot on that black person right there. So I was like, does television reflect the situation on the ground? It does not. And so I decided on my first day, I'm gonna start counting these black people. And I ran into some trouble on day one because I was staying out in Clearwater. It was hot, it was like 90-something degrees, 1,000% humidity. And I see these two black dudes in suits at the hotel where I'm staying, which is with the New York delegation of the GOP. I'm like, these are definitely black Republicans. They got suits. And it's hot as hell. Why else would you be wearing a suit? Unless you love low taxes. Like, that's the only good reason. It turns out there's another reason to wear a suit in some hot-ass weather. You are law enforcement. And I went up to these, like, can I take your picture? I want to be in the pictures of black Republicans. Like, we're not Republican. We work for the state. And then I saw the wire snake into their ear. And they had been mistaken as baggage handlers by many of the Republicans who were showing up. And so they said, we decided not to stand so close to the main entrance because it was less awkward for us and the people arriving. Day 3 of this experiment, Michelle Malkin blows up about negrospotting on Twitter. She's like, this is disgusting. How could you do this? Raise your hand if you know who Michelle Malkin is. That's too many. That's too many. For those who didn't raise your hand, I'm going to ruin a little piece of your love for the world. She's a terrible person. This is objective. This is science. And she is a far, far right-wing person who shouts a lot through text on paper. She wrote a book that defends the Japanese internment to give you a small flavor of the type of reasoned debate she brings to the world. So she blew up at me, bringing all her followers to blow up at me and threaten, I'm going to do this to you, I'd like to do more of this. Oh, it was wonderful. Really brought out the best of hatred. And I felt for a moment bad about it. And then I felt great. Because I'm like, yo, if I upset Michelle Malkin, I've done something great for my country. And I lived to count another Negro, and I kept doing it. I've been black for over 30 years. And I've developed a level of expertise in blackness, and I want to kind of skip to this book that I wrote that's called How to Be Black. It came out in February, Black Month, and I'm no idiot. And I want to be read. Y'all know I have some vanity project. I want people to buy it. And so my marketing was very direct. I wanted to get right to the heart of the matter. And really, you have a choice, right? You could side with the racists, Michelle Malkins of the world, or you could side with freedom. I chose freedom. I hope you make the same choice. And it worked. It was a New York Times bestseller. We had a lot of fun putting this book together. It was not a solo effort. It was a collective effort. I knew that my story of coming of blackness was nowhere near enough to live up to the title, How to Be Black. That is ridiculous. So I assembled an expert panel. I called them my black panel. They were populated by real-life black people who had also been black their whole lives. And I asked them a series of questions. When did you first realize you were black? How black are you? Have you ever wished you weren't black? Can you swim? And this is some of what they had to say.
So I came home and I remember I couldn't really move past the entrance of the house. And I needed to talk about the fact that this little girl said that I was black and that I, in fact, found myself to be beige.
I was playing doctor with a bunch of kids, and this one girl, it was her turn to kiss me, and she didn't. And she sort of ran away laughing, and the other kids ran away laughing. And the thing I realized at that point that I was black and they were all white, because this was a small private school in Boston. And that was the first time I remember feeling like black was somehow separate from the norm. You know, I think I knew I was black before then, because as I say in my show, my mom would not have let me not know I was black. There would have been no way that she would have let that information slip. It's cold outside, take a jacket, and you're black.
I was born in Africa, so everybody's black. So we don't really think about it like that. I mean, here, you go like, oh, so is he black? Is he white? Is he black? Is he black? Black? Africa, like, you don't ask. The assumption is that you're black. Therefore, what becomes more important is other things. What your name is, where do you come from, what language do you speak, what's your culture, what's your tribe, etc. So I didn't know I was black. When I was 8, I moved to the Middle East. I think the Middle East is the first time I discovered I was black. Because people will come up to you and they'll be like, oh, yes.
And what does that translate to?
That means, oh, this is a black guy.
I grew up in East Chinatown in Toronto, so it was made very clear that I was Guaylo from a very early...
Guaylo being...
white ghost. Sort of, you know, I know every derogatory term for a white person in Chinese.
That last person, I owe you a bit of an explanation. I said it was a black panel full of black people who've been black their whole lives. That was clearly a white dude. That was my control group. And I'm a scientist, people. I can't tell you enough, right? So that was Christian Lander stuff, white people. Like, I wanted a super white person to balance out the blackness of the book and give some representation to, you know, a lot of people in this country who are not always heard. So that was that. Now, there was another fun thing, another fun experiment that I did as I wrote the book. On the suggestion of a friend, Anand Girdhardas is his name, he said you should use this software to write your book in public and share your screen with people as you do so. And I wrote him a very long, multi-hundred-word essay back explaining why that was a terrible idea and convinced myself otherwise in the process of writing that. So I tried it. And I set this up, and there's a little banner on the right. I called it Live Writing. And it came with a chat room, which I ignored mostly because that detracts from writing a book. But I saved the logs, and I went back and looked later to see what do people have to say as they watch this dude write a book called How to Be Black. Here are some snippets of what came across. Gives me a connection with the author. How self-obsessed does one have to be to set something like this up? Very. Just a little I've read here makes me want to buy this book. Yes, it's working. It is interesting to see his writing flow. A lot of writers had never seen up close the screen of another writer. If you do, you are probably standing too close. So I gave folks permission to lurk and to stalk digitally for a few hours. I'm surprised to see Baratunde use semicolons. That was weird. Because I had to ask myself, like, do I emit some sort of anti-semicolon pheromone? Or is this punctuational racism? Like, I don't know. We got a black president. I feel like I could use all the punctuation now. It's a relatively free country. And then this is the best thing ever written on the internet. My girlfriend is Chinese, and I'm half Jamaican, half regular black. I think our kids might end up Dominican or something. I want to focus on regular black. Because I'm like, yo, is there a diet black? Is there a black zero? Is there a black classic? A failed experiment in black clear from the early 90s? Like, what's going on here? And then the Dominican thing, I want this couple to actually have a Dominican kid. I want the kid to speak only Spanish, love baseball, and mofongo. It's going to be the best. Gonna be the best. There's a series of recommendations for other titles and projects out there that I'm gonna flip through. I'll put this online so you can see it later. There's some really cool people doing interesting work using the power of storytelling to break the mold of what it is to be black and really of what it is to be. And so I'm sort of proud to be in the company of a whole bunch of other people that are part of it, a non-intentional but clearly collective project. Now, and this guy here, Kamal, he was in the video. He's got a great TV show on Thursday nights after Louis. You should definitely look at it. The conclusion of all this is that there is a story of who we are, and that is so important to being, is also articulating that being through as many ways as possible. It is one that is being co-written constantly. We don't have to take it from on high. It's not determined by the few networks or the few people with power, by the patriarchy or the matriarchy of some town. We're all co-writers in this, whether we want to be or not, and there are many ways and places to access it. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's the live stage, maybe it's just your family and your life, but it's being beautifully unfolded by us and before us. The most important thing I could share with all of you, I think, was said best by that anonymous commenter. We are all Dominican or something. Thank you very much.